So I decided that in order for me to make sure that I wasn't going to conform to society's rules and my family rules, I had to get clear on what it was I wanted. So I had to get really clear. It was more about learning who I was, getting clear on who I was.
That's Anita Charlot, and this is the Happy Curator podcast. People, welcome to the show. I'm Juliet J. Harris, aka the Happy Curator, your host. Anita Charlot is a metaphysician, a highly intuitive, empathic, life dating, relationship, and marriage coach, and the author of The 5 Phases of Dating, the grown-ass woman's guide to attracting and maintaining authentic relationships. She teaches high-achieving grown-ass women and a few awakened men how to attract and maintain authentic relationships through practical and spiritual concepts. Her personal story, which you will hear later in the podcast, is representative of so many women, unfortunately. Bad experiences can either take us down or empower us. Anita turned her love life around after leaving her abusive marriage to become this super badass woman with whom I've had these really fun conversations about dating, and I wanted to share them with you. We talk about what it takes to find your person and maintain a distance relationship in the COVID era, and how Anita got to where she is today. I love Anita's energy and wisdom, and I'm so happy to have her on the podcast today.
Hi, Anita. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today. How are you?
I am great, thanks. How are you?
Enjoying the sunny weather that we are having at the moment. It feels like summer. It is amazing, which is always bliss, but also a bit of a cave heat because we're all locked in and nobody can go on a date. So how are you experiencing the dating world, and the relationship world? Well, relationship, I suppose, if people have been, confined together. But for all us single people, being secluded in our house has been really difficult. So how are your clients dealing with all of that?
Well, I see the lockdown, if you will, as an opportunity to really get clear on what it is you want to attract into your life. So my single clients are finding ways, or they're forced now, not that they're finding ways, because they have no other choice. Before they could run from themselves, they could run from their habits, they could run from all of that. But now that they're forced to be in the house, now they're finding time, since they have nothing else to do, to focus on these things. And that is getting clear on what their past experiences have been, why they have been the way that they are, what they say they want versus what they really need, and then what they're looking for based on what is really in their heart and what would the person that would make love to their spirit versus, feel just a slap because they're bored or they're lonely. So the clients that are in relationships, whether they are, dating someone or they are actually married, those that are dating but not living with their significant other are getting creative. So I've coached people in long-term relationships, long distance relationships before. And so the tools that I provide for those individuals are the same tools that I am teaching my single clients, not single clients, but my clients that are in committed relationships, so that they keep their relationships fresh.
The married couples. 1 or 2 examples for us?
Sure. So for example, using, like we're doing here, using Zoom or Skype, or it could be, the FaceTime or whatever video chat, right? So there's such thing as watching movies together. whether you want to do it with your phone or you want to, put up your laptop and flip it around so that it's actually taking the, showing the video and you comment on it together. Or a lot of clients have, since we're here in Chicago, the biggest cable network here is Comcast. And so they just find a show that they want to watch. He has Comcast, she has Comcast, or she has Comcast, she has Comcast, and they just find the show and turn it on at the same time. And then they can like comment on the show as though they were sitting next to each other on the couch. When it comes to getting, let's just say, getting more intimate, I am not a proponent of doing video. People do what you want, but I've had too many women come back and let me know that their ex-boyfriends or ex-girlfriends have taken a video that they shared in private and has shared it somewhere else. So I just don't believe in doing the whole video sexting thing. I'm not into that.
I'm with you on that one.
But you can talk to me, right? If I suggest you can definitely have, conversations. You can talk each other through things. You can share that way. But I'm just not a proponent of the video. So there's several different ways to be creative and several different things to do. You can cook together, right? Or you can make dinner together. You don't have to make the same dish, but you can have the phone or the tablet or, the iPad, whatever it is up there, and you can have the conversation just like you're cooking with each other, or you can have wine and cocktail hour. You can do everything as long as you have access to a phone or video. You can still have virtual dates and still keep things fresh.
But aren't we lucky that when all of this is happening, that we have actually a phone and the possibility also of doing videos on that phone? Because, when you think about the pandemic in the Spanish flu one, they didn't have all of that. People used to send letters. So that took a while for it to come back. Okay, courtship was big. And that's the one thing I've noticed. And I thought, now maybe we're going to be able to have proper conversation with men. Okay, fair enough. I haven't been a lot on the dating apps, but I found that it's more or less business as usual when it comes to men. They're not really interested in having a long conversation. They're not interested in getting to know someone as such. If you don't tick 3 boxes, whatever those are, suddenly they disappear. That's the big ghosting thing. And you go, oh, okay. Or people are like, well, why don't you come and meet me? No.
Right. Like, not today. Not with this pandemic.
And they get upset. I don't know how it is in the US, but in the UK, they get really upset. And then you go, wow, okay, this is interesting. And I think that, I think more for men, they're not getting their needs met. And by needs, I mean their sexual needs met. And so there's a lot of frustration there. And maybe the women are working on themselves, but I'm not too sure that men are. I was reading an article today, actually, that said that about 50% of the people that were dating or looking for someone were actually interested in more meaningful relationships. That is good. That is good to hear. Where are they?
You said, where are they? Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. They didn't tell you where their research was from based on, a poll of 100 people from so-and-so.
No, but when I say that is that I haven't met those men because I'm into men. I haven't met those men on dating apps. It was just business as usual. And you think, okay, but business as usual is not working. So isn't it time that we try something else?
Well, I would, I'm happily married, so I'm not on the dating apps, but my a lot of my clients, what we focused on, and I did a series of, I guess you could say, workshops earlier this year on how to date successfully online during the pandemic. And for me, it's, at least for the people that I have coached, it is really important that they're clear in their bio and their description or your profile as to what you're looking for, right? You have to know, they have to have done the work with me before we can get to that part of the filling out the dating app profile, that they're clear on what they're looking for. They need to know what, and I have this, it's called the 3 list. So they need to know what they must have in a relationship, what they can compromise on, and the hell no's, right? The deal breakers. What are they not willing to deal with? And in creating those 3 lists, they're able to, without anybody else around, without mothers around, sisters, any other friends to judge what they're writing down, then they're getting really clear on what they want. Once they get clear on what they want, then we define the terms, because you have to define them. It's like, well, everybody knows what, I want someone who's good conversationalist. Well, okay, everybody is not going to know what that means, and everybody doesn't communicate in the same way. So what does that look like? So another one is people throw out, well, I shouldn't have to define honest. Everybody knows what honest is. I'm like, well, no, not really. Honesty to you can mean something different to the other person. So first figuring out what it is they want, then defining what it looks like, feels like, and sounds like to them, helps them to then recognize it when they see it. Okay. So if they're not clear on it, they can to me, I'm all about energy. So what you put out is what you get back. So if you're putting out, if they're putting out things that are not very clear, they're not being specific about what they're looking for, then the guys or the girls that are swiping and clicking on their profile, they don't really have a true understanding of what this person is about. So for me, I'm like, well, let's cut out all the crazies up front. All right, let's cut them out up front. Let's make sure that when he reads this profile, he recognizes that, no, I'm not here, for what they call in the dating app world, the DTF.
Ooh,
and
what is that?
It's so there's a cuss word in there, right? So the last word, it starts with an F. It's a 4-letter word that starts with an F. Okay, so you know what that is. But the first 2 words are down to, and then the F word.
Okay.
So if you want to make sure that you bypass those men that are only DTF, then you have to be clear in your description as to what you're looking for. So for example, if what you want is a relationship, then that's what you put in there. I want, I'm seeking a long-term relationship, or I'm looking for a guy who, is willing to take time to get to know me for the possibility of, a long-term relationship. If you put that LTR, or the long-term relationship, in there, the guy who's only DTF is not going to click the button, right? Unless he feels like he's so smooth that he's going to get you to change your mind.
And that's the thing, is that so many men, I've seen on my profile, I'm like, I've told you, basically, I've been very specific on my profile, what I'm looking for. So, well, I'm trying my luck. And a lot of men still try, because they still think that they're going to convince us to change
right.
what we're looking for.
And I don't doubt that. I truly believe that happens, because as women, most women, a lot of women tend to not mean what they say, right? So they'll say, I want this, I want that. And then they'll allow a guy to make them, convince them to change their mind. So if that's what, let's just say, I'm just going to throw a number out there. If that's what 75% of the women do, then of course they're going to try their luck. Okay, well, she's, very interesting. She's beautiful. She seems, I like her background. I like her conversation, or I like her profile. Let me try anyway. Okay. You can't blame a guy for trying, right? But you can still say, no, thank you, and keep it moving. Delete or block or whatever you're going to do.
I agree, but sometimes, it takes a little while. So you spend a little while talking, and then suddenly it pops, and you think, man, you just basically wasted my time, because
Yeah.
I'm very specific, at
Mm-hmm.
what I'm looking for, and what's written on the can is basically what I'm looking for. All right, I'm not changing.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so I was, I just think, well, that's a waste of my time, and it's actually a waste of his time also, because he could have been looking for someone else, that have wanted that. And there's no right or wrong. That's the
Right.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think with society, there's often a lot of pressure, especially for women. You basically study, and then it's like, oh, well, are you dating someone? And then you start dating someone. Oh, are you serious? Are you gonna get married? And then then you're thinking, maybe I'm gonna get married. I don't know. Okay, it's gonna happen. All
Mm-hmm.
right, when are you gonna get children? You've barely got the ring on your finger,
Right.
and there's this constant pressure for women, to get to a point. But every relationship and every person is different as they want and need.
Right. I agree.
So how do we move from that? Because it really breaks my heart. I've got some clients, and they've been married, they've been in relationships, and because they felt pressure to be in them, and they've
Mm-hmm.
been miserable. And
Mm-hmm.
and for some men it's been the same, or they've been with someone and suddenly the woman felt pregnant, and so they felt compelled to stay to do the right thing. But 15
Mm-hmm.
years down the line, they're miserable.
Right.
So how can we start shifting those beliefs? Because all of these are old beliefs that are not serving anyone anymore, especially
Right.
not in the society, in our day and
Mm-hmm.
age. So how can we start shifting those beliefs, you think?
Well, I can tell you what I did, because I'm on my second marriage. Okay. And the first one, I was pressured into getting married. So just to let you all into my business, girl, I'm just gonna give it to you straight. Um, I found myself uh pregnant, and I already had one child, and I wasn't married yet.
Ooh.
So the conversation became, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I had family members that were like, well, you should get married. I'm like, well, I don't want to marry this guy. Okay. So I was young and was not practicing safe sex like I should have been. So I ended up pregnant. So then the pressure came on. Well, if you don't, and then he asked me to marry him because he's from the South, so the southern states. And so that's what you do when a girl gets pregnant. You ask her to marry you. Well, I knew in my heart that this wasn't the guy that I was supposed to marry, but I kept hearing from family members, another man is not going to want you if you have 2 kids by 2 different men. Okay, that's what I heard. Now I'm pregnant and I get hormones and I get, all that stuff that's happening in my body, and I'm questioning, okay, what should I not? And then I tried to call off the wedding like 3 times.
Wow.
Then it was, well, I have people coming up here from the South. They've already bought plane tickets. They've already booked their hotels. You can't call this off. And I'm like, well, okay, now, yeah, they've spent money. And so this whole thing leads me to getting married. Okay. Now I'm married. The next morning, when I wake up in the honeymoon hotel room, I'm staring out the window like, what have I done? I knew it was not the person that I was supposed to marry, but I allowed others to pressure me into this. So that marriage ended up being an abusive marriage. Okay, so I was there. I think we only stayed together in the same house for about 1.5 years. But once I got out of that, my goal was to not get back into that type of situation again, regardless to what other people had to say. So I decided that in order for me to make sure that I wasn't going to conform to society's rules and my family rules, I had to get clear on what it was I wanted. And then I had to tell everybody else to kiss my behind if I needed to, because they were not going to be
Go girl.
involved in that situation with me, right? So I had to get really clear. It was more about learning who I was, getting clear on who I was, realizing that I have been in a situation that I should not have gotten in, but that I allow other people to pressure me to be into, and that I didn't want to do that again. So how is I going to stay away from that? By not letting other people speak over my life, by not letting other people tell me what I should and shouldn't do, because I am the person that has to live it. I am the person that has to be in it. Okay. I have clients that, are pressured to have, just like you said, they're pressured to have kids. The grandma, the mother is pressing, she wants grandchildren, or the mother wants to live, the mother wants her to live a certain type of lifestyle. And so she wants her to marry someone with money versus someone, for their money versus how they make this person feels or that woman feels. And I'm like, you know what? No, is your mother going to be in the house with you when you guys get married? She's like, well, no. I was like, okay. Is your mother going to put up with all the, the X, Y, and Z that you told me about? Well, no. Okay, so then why are you going to get yourself involved in this relationship or into this marriage because someone else thinks you should when you're the person that has to be in there? So a lot of that is peeling back the layers of societal programming, family programming that they've been receiving. I've even had people to get married because their friends were all getting married, right? 6 of my girlfriends getting married or have been married. Now I feel like I'm the last one. Now I need to get married. So they rush and get married to somebody just to be married. And then that they're not happy. Either he or she or both are out living separate lives and just living in the same house together because they don't want to be the couple that got divorced. So all of this putting too much energy, focus, power into the hands of other people is not going to help you to identify with the person that is perfectly imperfect for you. I don't care if you're a brain surgeon, it's a true story. Client's daughter, the mother is calling me. She's all up in air because her daughter is a brain surgeon, but she was dating and totally madly in love with the yoga instructor. The mother's like, I can't believe we paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for her to go to school, for her to end up with a yoga instructor. I'm like, well, what do you think he gives her? What is the draw? And she was like, well, he just wants her money. I was like, well, let's take money out of it, right? What do you think she sees in him? The mother just couldn't see it. She's like, well, I don't understand what she sees in him. Hey, I just don't get it. He's just not, he's just so soft. I was like, okay, so you want her to be with a tough guy. She's like, he needs to be tough. He needs to own his own business. She needs to have someone that matches her. I'm like, that's the problem. You're looking for someone to match your daughter's career goals, maybe her bank account, her place in society versus someone that matches her heart. What he does for her is she's a brain surgeon, for goodness sake. She has to go to work and she has to deal with all this stressful situation. Can you imagine how stressful it could be to be tinkering around in someone's brain all day? One wrong move, one sneeze, one anything, and you can mess a person up for life. Well, when she comes home, she doesn't want someone else that's going to be, that's going to be talking about everything that he did and looking to her for her to support him in what he did. Not that we're not supposed to support our guys, but the thing is the stress level. What does the yoga instructor bring? He brings balance. He helps her calm down. He helps her relieve her stress. He has a way of talking to her to make things better. So she gets recharged by being with him so that she can go out tomorrow and save the world again. That's different. Wouldn't you want your daughter to be happy than be with somebody who is barely home because he's not, he's busy, he's working, he has this, he has that, he doesn't have time to focus on her? Wouldn't you want her to be happy? It's like, well, I didn't think about it that way. I was like, yeah. I said, well, so I married for position. I was like, well, you married for a position. That doesn't mean that your daughter should have to do the same thing and follow in your footsteps. So it's not about
how happy is the mother?
She's not really that happy. She enjoyed the lifestyle that she's had, but she's not like, I met her in a couples workshop. Her and her husband were there together to try to work on their marriage. And then she's trying to dictate what her daughter's doing, and she wants her daughter to follow in her footsteps. I'm like, no. Let your daughter have what she has because it feeds her spirit and it makes love to her heart. I would much prefer that than someone who matches my resume.
And that's the thing, is that, you know, people often, well, for a very long time, and still in certain situations, it's all about, you know, the marriage of convenience. The man has got money, the woman, you know, like the mom enjoys the position, they're not happy, you know, that down the line is going to end up in divorce, probably a bitter one. So you can, you know, you can already see it 10, 15, 20 years ahead on how it's going to be. And because I think part of the problem is that people are not letting their souls connect.
Right.
And when your soul connects to someone else's soul, the soul doesn't care what the person does in the real world.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
The person sees, oh, well, maybe he's not got the money, you know, he hasn't got the big house or the big flashy car, but the soul recognizes that there is a certain happiness, you know, that is linked to that person, and the other soul is like, ooh, I want some of that. And I don't know if you've noticed, but every time we go against our soul, we get tantrums. The soul basically, you know, revolts. And it's like a shitstorm.
Yeah, it's not cool at all. You know, I look at, you know, people who are unhappy in their relationships, and after being with someone and being unhappy in your relationship, then other things start to happen. You start to second guess yourself. You know, do you deserve to be happy? Should you be? Is this what everybody else is doing? You know, is everybody else unhappy and they're just in their relationships because this is the decision that they made? I get so many people who, because of religion, are looking to stay in marriages because they stood before God and their families and they, you know, said their vows. Well, that's great. So did I, right? I stood before God and my family and said my vows the first time too. But I did not vow to stay in a marriage that was abusive. I did not vow to stay in a marriage where a man thought it was okay to put his hands on me. I didn't vow to do that, right? So if anybody had a problem with me walking away from that, then that's just too bad because it was my choice. Now get this. While in it, I had the whole shame thing. I had the guilt. I should be here. Is it me? You know, I went to therapy. Okay, maybe I'm not being a good wife. I heard from family members, well, it's your mouth. Your mouth is too smart. That's why your husband puts his hands on you. You need to stop talking. I'm like, are you crazy? I'm not that. It just didn't resonate with me. Yeah.
I have no worries for what you've just said.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, and then it was, well, you know, even for those that have been in relationships, I didn't have, not that I'm aware of, I didn't have this issue, but for those that are married, and their husbands are messing around, they're like, well, you know what? That's just what men do, right? Men are, it's just not possible for men to be faithful. And you just need to expect that man, you know, your husband's going to have another woman. I've heard this in several different circles. This wasn't my situation, but I'm like, no, that's not true. That is not true. Men are capable of being monogamous, if that is what that man chooses. But you also have to understand the energy of man and where that man is along his spiritual and emotional evolution. So you can't take a guy, common sense would tell you, you can't take a guy that's in his early 20s and not expect him to be out there, you know, running around and wanting to hang out with the fellas.
Sowing his seeds.
Right. You can't expect to lock him down right away. You need to experience life. He needs to experience life so that, you know, you need to be able to identify in conversation with him and just being, you know, around him or in Zoom with him at this point, whether or not he's at that place. You know, women often tell guys, well, we've been dating for, you know, 2 years, 5 years, 6 months, you know, 4 years. Where is this going? It's like, well, you should never have to ask, where is it going? You feel free, if you want to ask, you can ask the question, but if you have to ask the question,
It's
and if
going nowhere.
exactly, if you have to ask the question, you need to really think about that, because when a man decides that he wants to make you either his girlfriend or his wife, he let that come from him. I'm very traditional in that way. I
But
don't
it's
believe
not, I don't think it's a question of being traditional. Is men are hunters, so basically, if there's a woman they want, they will try everything to get her. So they'll be motivated, and that's part of the game. And that's, I'm the first one to admit that I'm a feminist, but certain things you've got to understand, like the energy of men is to hunt. So I will let them do the hunting. I don't want to be hunted. Right. I don't have the energy. And
yeah,
so that's the thing that women have got to understand. There's nothing wrong with that. But some people, I see my parents' second date, I think my dad asked my mom to marry him. Okay, and they were married until my father passed away. Okay, like every marriage, they had ups and downs, but I don't think divorce was on the card. Or maybe it was. I don't know. It's completely oblivious to it, But that's the thing, there's no right or wrong. People are, you can't marry him after the second date. Well, some people wait 10 years and then they don't even make it to year 11 if they get married after year 10, because suddenly being married doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
So there are so many different relationships. And I think the key to all of it is communication. People don't talk.
Yeah. And when they do talk, they don't talk about what's really important to them, right? They share they're on the surface. They talk about surface things versus really getting down to, this is, as you and I have discussed before, like, what is your sexual drive? Do you have a high sex drive? Do you have a low sex drive? Or what is your view on, children? I find it's so amazing to me that people don't even have conversations about who wants to have kids, who doesn't want to have kids, when you want to have kids. They don't have those conversations before they get married. And then 3 years later, he's upset because she won't go off the pill. She won't get pregnant. Well, did you talk about this? Did you talk about when you wanted to have children and how many you wanted to have? Well, no, I just thought it was a part of, oh my goodness. How can you do that?
But exactly. And it's like sex. If you don't talk about your wants and needs, sex is super important. If you find someone you need to find someone that is on the same level, whatever those wants and needs are, because again, there's nothing wrong with them. Right. You just need to be in alignment. But if you don't talk about those and you're basically not connecting on that, you'll either end up in a divorce or someone will be cheating, So it's an important conversation to have. And from my clients, sometimes I said, okay, so how is the sex life with your future ex-husband or future ex-wife? Because that is going down there. And they're like, well, I thought that it would get better. No, if it's not wham bam right from the beginning, then it will never get better, except if you consciously decide to go and see a sex therapist and do something about it, because your love life, the sentiments that you have for each other are just out of this world, and you want to work on that. But there is a certain shame about seeking help. Yeah. Especially when it comes to sex, and a relationship, I think maybe in the US it's bigger about, going to go and see someone for couple therapy, or work on their relationship. But somehow in this country it's still a bit, I think, taboo, but people don't talk to each other. So they can't fix their relationship if they're not talking. Yeah. Again, by talking, we also manage to dismantle all those beliefs that are not working for us. And it doesn't matter if it's women and men, men and men, women and women, it doesn't really matter how it works. it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So how, once you did, get divorced and you met husband number 2, what did you get clear on? What was it that you were looking for?
Well, there was there was a 10-year, 2016, 2000, probably about at least 15-year gap between divorce and starting to date husband number 1, because husband number 2. Husband number 2 and I knew each other for 8 years before we got married. We knew each other for 6 years before we moved in together, right? Before we got a house together. So here's where in that 15-year span, I was dating, and as I talked about earlier, my 3 list, I was going through, and things would move around in my list, right? So at one point, I thought I wanted to date someone that was a PhD. Oh, I want them to be so smart, right? Super smart. But then when I tried to have regular conversations with them, I couldn't talk to them because they were all in their head. They were either in their head or they were reading some scientific journal, or it was just too much. I was like, okay, nope, let me move that off of the must-have list to the can compromise on list. Actually, it went from must-have to the hell no list. But, I was like, okay. So I got really clear on what those things were that I wanted. Then I got really clear on what it would look and feel like. So I'll tell you how I attracted my current husband, love of my life, the man who came with things that I didn't even know I wanted, but that was a byproduct of what I did in order to attract him. Once I got clear, I came up with my 3 list. I did my definition, so I knew what it looked like, what it sounded like, how I wanted him to talk to me. I knew that because before I went to sleep every night, I would fall asleep to the vision of my husband in my mind. Okay. So, and I don't know if I've mentioned this here on the call, but between the time I divorced my ex-husband to the time I started dating my current husband, I dated women during that time. So I got a clear understanding of what it's like to date women and the challenges that present themselves and the emotions that come up and the insecurities that pop up. And I was like, whoa, okay, wait a minute. I took time between the last girl that I dated and when I started dating my husband to really start to pull out and work on those things within me. I knew that, and at the time, I didn't care. At that time, I didn't care who it was, whether it was going to be a woman or a man. I didn't care. What I wanted to attract the right spirit. So I said, what do I want this spirit to feel like? What do I want to feel when I'm in the presence of this spirit? And I started with the visualizations, and I would just have like conversations like the person was there already, right? And I'd see us going here and going there. I had the visualization exercise in my book, but I started like the day, thinking about one day, a perfect day in our life, right? And then as I started to develop that and I started to, have fun visualizing that, I said, well, wait a minute, let me be more specific here. Because if I'm very vague and I'm putting this out into the universe, then the universe doesn't really know exactly what to send back to me because I'm not being super clear. So I said, what is the energy that I want around my life? Because I had experienced the challenge with dating women and what that looked like and how that felt and all the side eyes and the things that I couldn't do that I wanted to do in public that I felt like just weren't acceptable. I was like, well, is that what I want? Do I want to continue moving forward in that? Or do I want, to be able to show, PDA, public displays of affection? What is it that I want? Do I want someone that's going to match my feminine energy, or do I want the balance? And so I went through that and I got really clear on that. So it became clear to me that the person that was going to be perfectly imperfect for me was going to be a male. Now, I didn't want to, of course, I could have put Matthew McConaughey's face out there. I'm so in love with Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, Matthew.
Oh my gosh.
Do you
My
go to
I have a
sleep with
truck.
him? Sorry, a little aparte. Do you go to sleep with him? You know he does a
I,
nap.
I do. He's in my Calm app. He reads me a story every night. So I go to bed at night with a smile on my face. Yes, I do. And my truck's name is Matthew McConaughey. So everybody in my house, my
Love it.
husband knows. He's like, your husband's on TV. I'm like, oh, here I go. Everybody knows that. So I didn't put Matthew McConaughey's face on my person. I didn't put a face at all. But what I did, and based on what I wanted, how I wanted to feel when I was with this person, because the goal was I need to be able to recognize this person before I start dating them, right? I need to be able to have, just if we meet in a casual situation, I need to be able to determine within like the first 10 or 15 minutes whether or not this is somebody that I want to continue to pursue to get to know, right? I was tired of the BS. I didn't want to have to deal with all the drama. So I was like, let's get clear on this from an energetic perspective, part of, some things that I learned during my degree. So I go through this and I say, I want him to be taller than me, because my ex-husband was like 2 inches taller than me, and that was not going to work anymore. So I need
Doesn't
him
work
to
with
be,
the Boutons.
right? I need him to be, at least 5'10" or above. That I'm 5'1".
Okay.
But I wanted him to be 5'10" or above. So I could say that it's my dream guy, so I could put whatever out there I wanted, right?
I'm fine with that.
I wanted him to be a man of color. So he didn't have to be African American. He could be anything, right? Just a man of color. He had to have I didn't want a bodybuilder, because I didn't want to date like someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But I wanted to feel strong in his arms, right? I had to feel as though I was protected and that I was safe, and that I knew what his arms felt like, because I envisioned the way he held me, the way his arms felt. I envisioned how he spoke to me, how he handled me when I was a nervous wreck, when I was having a female moment. How did he speak to me during that time? I wanted to make sure that he came from a situation or a family background where he grew up with his mother, and he had to have a love for his mother. He needed to have like sisters in his life, so that he understood, from a brother perspective, what his sisters went through. I got really clear on all of this stuff. And the more I got involved in the visualization, like I had dates with this guy before, anything, I ever even met him. And I never saw his face, but there was this one visualization that I would do all the time, and it's on the ocean. I love the ocean. So I'm standing out there, the sun is about to rise. I have on this, I am super, super creative when it comes to imagination. So I heard the seagulls, I smelled salt from the water, I felt the cold rush up on my feet from the sand, on the shoreline. I had on a white linen dress, very flowy, so it was blowing in the breeze. I don't think I cared about what my hair looked like, but I just had that. And in my mind's eye, we were staying in a cabana, which was right on the sand. And there was only 2 steps. And I would see him in my mind's eye in his white linen. He had on a long sleeve white linen like tunic, and then white linen flowy pants. And he was leaning up against the post. And then as I'm watching the sunrise, before the sun comes up completely, he walks up behind me. I never see his face. I just see that he could have been tan. He could have been African American. It could have been, the way that, the sun was hitting him, but I knew that he had some color. And then he would walk up behind me every time in this visualization before I went to bed. And he just put his arms around me. Never saw his face. And I would just lean back into his chest, but I knew what those arms felt like. I knew what his energy felt like. And so I was very happy. I wasn't looking for anybody when I met him in school. We were both finishing up other degrees, my management degree. We were both finishing up our management degrees at school. We were in a marketing class together. Our teacher happened to put us in the same in the same group for a class project. And the way that he talked to the other two classmates, I wanted to kill him, but he was so patient. And I was like, I'm paying attention, like, wow. And when I would go get spastic because we had a deadline and the other two weren't, coming up, he was very patient the way he talked to me. I was like, this is very familiar. He walks me to the train one day and it was raining. So I only had one umbrella. He was like, oh, can I walk you to the train? I was like, yeah, okay. We had been together. I thought he was cool, but I didn't think that I was attracted to him. Remember, I had been dating women before him. So as soon as I put my arm around his arm, I was like, oh my God, this is the arm. This is the arm, right? But I didn't make the mistake that some women do, because there are women I hear pray for God to send me my husband. God, send me my husband. And then this one guy that comes that has some of the attributes that they were looking for, like, thank you, God, this is my husband. I was like, no, this arm feels good. This is showing me that it's possible to have this feeling, but I'm not falling for it because I didn't think I was attracted to him like that. Class was like 10 weeks long. So by the time we got to like the 8th week, it was time for the finals project. We excluded the other two. We just did it ourselves. So I knew he had a sense of humor. I knew he was patient. He knew how to talk to me. He had the right arm, right? His energy was great. He was a twin. He had a twin sister. He had 2 other sisters. He was, not a mama's boy, but he very much loved and respected his mom. I was like, wow, this is cool. But yeah, okay, he's just a guy I'm going to school with. So one day in the cafeteria, we're studying, and we're getting ready to put the finishing touches on our final project, and he gets up to leave. I have no idea how he ended up kissing me because I wasn't looking for the kiss, wasn't even thinking about it. But this is, let me tell you what he did. Not only did he kiss me, we were in the cafeteria. Not only did he kiss me, but those lips, when I opened my eyes, he had already walked away. He was halfway to the elevator and waving at me. So I'm just like caught up in the energy of it all. And I'm standing there like a high school girl with my lips tooted in the air. I'm like, what is happening? I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is cool, but I'm still not freaking out. That was the early part of November, just before Thanksgiving. School was done. We didn't have school again until January. So hadn't heard from him. After we did the final project, we were there. He walked me to the train again. This time I had my son. He leaned in to kiss me and I pulled back, like not in front of my son, right? So that was it. I hadn't heard from him. On December 18th of that year, I remember the day because I had dropped my son off at the airport to go visit his dad. He butt dialed me. So his phone was in his pocket, right? And he didn't realize he had dialed me. And I'm listening and I hear a woman in the background. So I'm like, oh, isn't this something? He's going to call me, butt dial me while he's with another woman. So I waited and listened for a bit, to see what she was talking about. Couldn't really hear her voice. So I hung up and then I called him back and he was like, hey girl, how you doing? I'm like, don't hey girl me. I'm revoking your player card. Don't butt dial me when you with another woman. He's like, that's my sister. Anyway, we talked for a bit and we decided we were gonna, connect, go out on a date. That was December 18th. I didn't hear from him again until December 31st. And he called us like, hey, I'm in your neighborhood. No, he wasn't. We live 40 minutes apart. So he was not in my neighborhood. And how dare you call me on New Year's Eve to see what I'm doing? I had a date. I was like, well, that's good. Nice to talk to you. I hope you, have a nice life, basically. I hung up the phone. And so from that date, it was 12/31 that year. February 14th, I sent out a mass text to everybody in my phone, like Happy Valentine's Day. So then he texts me back and he says, oh, I've been looking for your number. I'm like, that's BS. If you knew it was me when I text you, then that means my number was in your phone. Who you think you're fooling? He's like, let me make it up to you. Let me make it up to you. I was like, this is the last time. We went out that night, not that night, but like when we actually scheduled, and we've been together ever since. But I knew what he felt like, right? I knew the energy of it, even though it didn't happen like right away. It's just the conversations. I knew what the energy was. I knew his personality, the type of personality that I wanted. And that's because I got clear and I lived in it. I had been in a relationship basically virtually all that time with the energy of what I wanted to attract into my life. And 13 years, I think we're on year 13. We're still together.
Yeah, and I think what's important to recognize is that sometimes things don't get aligned, and you can either surrender to the experience and let it happen if it's supposed to happen in this lifetime. And if you don't, and you try to force it, then it goes south, basically. It doesn't work out. Anything we force in our lives because we desperately want it, it will backfire at one point. It's
Right.
It's what basically I referred to earlier as the soul tantrum. There's something will happen, and basically you will get it all back in your face, and it will hurt. But because you didn't listen to that, and it took me a long time to understand that my soul basically threw tantrums. When things were not aligning, things were difficult, things were being forced, anything was happening, some kind of abuse or anything like that, then that was me not being aligned with my soul. And if more people were, then things would just flow.
Yeah.
And it's this, and especially with dating, there is a beauty in the flow.
There is.
And taking your time to get to know to someone is not cliche, it's not old-fashioned. It enables you, or anyone, us, to see if we are on the same path. But it doesn't mean that you want to wait 20 years before you start, start dating.
Right. Right.
Sometimes we have those feelings inside and our soul knows, but our mind needs to play catch up. So at what point, do we tell the egos, like, please let me be, because I know this feels right. But the ego will be like, no, this will not work out. This is the wrong person for you. Your brother, your sister, your mother, your dad, whoever in your friends, no, he's not the right person, or she's not the right person. But deep down, this is it.
Yeah.
So it does take guts to basically stand up to everyone and say, no, that is my person. I need to go there. So how do you encourage your clients to basically tell their ego to shut up, not listen to the toxicity around them, and just go for it?
Well, I encourage my clients to, it all stems from self-awareness. They really have to know what they want. But I also teach them that even if you decide to forget what everybody else says and you decide to go with this individual, to be with this individual in a relationship and it doesn't work out, it's okay. Because let me get it right because I always mess it up and it's my own quote, okay? How do you do that when it's your own quote? Here we go. Every dating situation is not a potential relationship. And every relationship is not a potential marriage. Your job is to continue to have the experiences and to stay open so that you learn how to tell the difference. You could date somebody for 2 weeks and then realize that that's not it. You can date somebody for 2 months and realize that's not it. You can date somebody, what I have in the book, I talk about it too, my 3-6-9 rule, where the representative, and this typically works for men, okay? As a woman dating men, you have to make it past that 3-month mark before you start expecting, do not start signing his last name after your name in the first 3 months, right? You need time to get to know that person, typically men will show up, and I've had, in the years that I dated women, men were totally open to talk to me because they didn't feel intimidated by me. They knew they couldn't have anything with me, so they told me the truth. And from a man's mouth, from several men's mouth, they said that the first 3 months, the guy is going to send in a representative. He's sending in a person that he thinks you want. Based on what you say, he wants to become the person that you need in order for you to select him. But he can't hold that up beyond 3 months, right? So then you pay attention to what's happening the first 3 months. And then after you pass through the first 3 months, then you start noticing that, you know, you do whatever you want to do, that starts to fade. And then he starts to, you know, well, no, I don't really feel like doing that. Or no, I don't want to do that today. You pay attention to all of that. So there's a 3, 6, 9. He's going to represent the first 3 months. Don't get caught up. Take your time. Pay attention. You know, really see whether or not you're gelling with this guy for the next 3 months. You know, take your time. Pay attention. And then if you get to the 6 month mark, you're at a point now where he's either going to completely show you his behind, or he's going to show you that he has long-term potential. But don't be upset because you dated somebody for 6 months and it didn't grow into something else. And don't feel obligated if you dated someone for 6 months and you feel like, well, we've been together all this time, so I may as well stay with him. No, you wouldn't wear a pair of shoes that were too small any longer than you had to just because they were cute. You wouldn't do that. So why would you do that with something that's more, you know, life changing, altering in your life with a guy versus a pair of shoes?
Don't you think that we would need the 3, 6, 9, as you call it, if people were just true right from the beginning?
Right. I do agree.
So
100%.
If people are true to themselves, and that's why, you know, I find it interesting when you really have souls connecting, because your soul is basically speaking your truth. You know, this is who I am, and basically suck it up. You know, either you align with me, either you don't. But you know, if you're up for a booty call, that's not what I mentioned on my profile. So that's on you for not understanding that. That's not me.
Right.
But if people are truthful right from the get-go, then normally, I say normally, things should just be flowing graciously.
It would be wonderful if everybody was.
Oh yeah, it would be.
It would be. But we know, you know, reality dictates that everybody's not. And so we have, and that people will become what they think you want them to. Women do the same thing, right? They will turn into the woman that they think he wants or he needs, so that he chooses her over somebody else versus just being herself. And if he doesn't choose her, then, oh, well, I had a good time while it lasted. Let me move on to the next person. But if everybody said what they meant and meant what they said, then it would be a different kind of dating environment. But we have to learn how to read between the lies, not the lines, but read between the lies that people tell you and tell themselves about who they really are. You got to give yourself time to do that, though.
And on these words, my lovely, I shall bid you goodbye. Thank you again so much for your insight on all of this. I shall have you back to talk about more topics, definitely. And I hope to speak to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. And I am looking forward to coming back whenever you want.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
There you have it, my lovelies. As you've heard, Anita and I have the same type of no-nonsense views on life. We tell it how it is, because we have learned over the years that if we aren't true to ourselves, we are miserable and can't serve our clients as we should. Dating can be seen as messy and complicated, but it really doesn't have to be. Going deep and owning who you are will help you define your wants and needs. When this has been done, then it's a question of calling out for that person. Yes, I am single at the moment, and while I'd love nothing more to have found my person, some part of me is enjoying being in love with just me. You can get more info on Anita's coaching on her website, anitacharlot.com. She's also on Insta and Facebook under Anita Charlot. Her book, The 5 Phases of Dating, can be found on Amazon. She also hosts 2 podcasts, Mindful Menopause for the Grown-Ass Woman and the Coronavirus Chronicles. The link for a free video training, Can You Handle Your Grind, is on the show's notes with all the other links to Anita's information I have just mentioned. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends and family and leave me a comment rating on the platform that you use. You can join the conversation in my Facebook group, The Happy Curator Podcast, and keep updated by following me on Instagram and Facebook under The Happy Curator Podcast. Until next time.